In May 1945, as Allied prosecutors were finalizing the list of men who would face justice at Nuremberg, a man who had run Hitler's entire Eastern Front intelligence network was quietly boarding an American military aircraft bound for Washington. His name was Reinhard Gehlen. And he was not in chains. He was carrying something. 50 steel drums, buried months earlier in the Austrian Alps, microfilm canisters packed with the names, locations, and methods of Soviet spy networks that no Western agency had ever managed to penetrate. He had planned this moment. He knew exactly what he was worth to the right buyer. While the trials began, while men were sentenced and hanged, Reinhard Gehlen sat across a table from American intelligence officers and negotiated his future. What happened next was not a mistake. It was not an oversight. It was a decision. And the files that prove it were classified for over 50 years. To understand what Gehlen offered, you have to understand what 1945 actually looked like from inside American intelligence. The war in Europe was ending. But a different kind of conflict was already beginning. The Soviet Union, an ally days before, was now viewed in Washington as the next existential threat. American agencies had almost no intelligence infrastructure inside Soviet territory. No agent networks. No sources. No maps of what Stalin was actually doing. Gehlen had all of it. For years, as head of Fremdheer Ost, Foreign Armies East, he had built the most sophisticated Soviet intelligence operation in existence. He knew which Soviet officers could be turned. He knew the internal structure of Red Army units. He had informants embedded across Eastern Europe. And he had preserved everything on microfilm before the Reich collapsed, because he had always assumed this day would come. His pitch to the Americans was straightforward: I give you everything I know about the Soviets. In return, you protect me, fund me, and let me rebuild my organization with my own people. The Americans accepted. The arrangement was formalized under the code name Operation Rusty. Gehlen was transported to the United States, debriefed at Fort Hunt in Virginia, and returned to West Germany to begin rebuilding. The CIA, formally established in 1947, would fund his operation directly. He would report to them. He would vet his own staff. That last detail is the one that should have alarmed someone. Gehlen did not come alone. The organization he rebuilt, what became known simply as the Gehlen Organization, was staffed, in significant part, by former SS and SD officers. Men who had not simply served the Nazi regime administratively. Men with direct involvement in some of the regime's worst operations on the Eastern Front. One of them was Emil Augsburg, an SS officer who had participated in mobile operations across occupied Soviet territory. Another was Franz Six, who had been convicted at Nuremberg, sentenced to 20 years, and then quietly released after 4. He went to work for Gehlen. The CIA was aware. Internal memoranda from the period, later declassified, showed that American handlers knew the backgrounds of many individuals inside the Gehlen organization. The assessments were frank about what these men had done. And then came the conclusion, repeated across document after document: their intelligence value outweighed the risk. This was not a rogue operation run by a few officers acting independently. This was institutional. Approved at senior levels. rationalized as a necessary cost of the Cold War. And for over a decade, it remained invisible, buried under layers of classification, known only to those inside the arrangement itself. The Nuremberg trials had told the world that accountability was absolute, that no one who served the regime was beyond reach. But some of them were already on the American payroll. For decades, what happened inside the Gehlen organization remained in the category of historical suspicion, documented in fragments, disputed by officials, impossible to prove completely. That changed in 2001. That year, the Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act, passed by the U.S. Congress in 1998, compelled American intelligence agencies to begin releasing classified records related to former Nazis in U.S. government service. What followed was one of the most significant declassification processes in American history. Over 8 million pages were reviewed. Hundreds of files were made public for the first time. What investigators found confirmed the architecture of the arrangement in precise, bureaucratic detail. CIA Inspector General reports acknowledged, in the agency's own language, that it had knowingly employed individuals with significant involvement in wartime atrocities. The justification, again and again, was Cold War necessity. But the story did not end with the CIA. In 1956, the Gehlen organization was formally dissolved and immediately reconstituted as the BND, West Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service. Reinhard Gehlen became its first president. He held that position until 1968. The men who had built their careers inside his CIA-funded network went with him. The organization simply changed its name. What does that mean? It means that the post-war intelligence architecture of Western Europe, one of the foundational structures of the Cold War, was built, in part, by men who had been shielded from the very tribunal designed to ensure that what they had done could never be treated as acceptable. The Nuremberg trials created a principle that there are acts for which no political justification is sufficient. The Gehlen arrangement did not disprove that principle openly. It simply worked around it, quietly, patiently, and successfully. The files are public now. The names are on record. What remains unresolved is a harder question. If the institutions built to contain the Cold War were constructed, in part, on protected operatives from the previous regime, what exactly did the West decide it was defending? That question doesn't have a comfortable answer. And the historical record suggests that the people who made these decisions knew it. They made them anyway. If this is the kind of history that doesn't make it into textbooks, leave a comment below with what you think should have happened differently. And if you want to keep going deeper into the histories that were quietly set aside, you know what to do.